theswirlworld.com, podcast episode
119.
The Swirl World.
Interracial.
Diverse.
Beautiful.
Today's shout out goes to Lavinia and Bugetto Rising of the Just Thinking Out Loud podcast. Bugetto is a former police officer from Baltimore City, and Lavinia's a full-time mom from the outer edges of the suburbs. They share their perspectives on news stories, politics, entertainment, pop culture, current events, and as they put it, just general ratchetness. You can find them at jtolmedia.com. Again, our shout out is to Lavinia and Bugetto Rising of the Just Thinking Out Loud podcast. And now, on to today's show. Keep listening.
Welcome, Nationers, to the Swirl World podcast presented by theswirlworld.com, where we celebrate Black women and the diverse men who love us. I'm your co-host, Adrienne London Leach, and today we have an exciting guest that we're interviewing, Mrs. Charmaine T. Davis, a very witty and talented writer of interracial romance. Let me tell you a little bit about Charmaine. She specifically writes Black women, white men romance, like about middle grade fiction and family comedy and Christian fiction and devotional. Now, her most recent work, which we're going to talk about today, is Law of the Heart, and maybe a little bit about Christmas Law, but we really want to focus on Law of the Heart. Her books are available many places, which we will talk about towards the end of our podcast. Her romance feature Black women and white men of love interest, number one, because she is a Black woman who has been married to a white man since 1992, and number two, because she desires to connect Black women and white men without fetishization into an equal, loving, respectful, and romantic relationship. And Nationers, I want to say, when we use that word, I know we're using it colloquially because, fetishes are objects, but what we're trying to say is it's not one way. Most of us believe that white men have this, and I say quote-unquote, fetish about Black women. Don't get it twisted. Black women can have the same thing about white men. And this is part of the myth that Charmaine is trying to dispel. So she talks about the equality and the respectability and the romance in these type of relationships. That's why she does the narrative. And they can be historical narratives as Black women as victims and white men as victimized. Actually, I'm sorry, they are not those historical ones. She does them differently. And her dream is to end the color division and help humanity remember we are one blood chosen by the one. So, many of Charmaine's critics have often said that her books are refreshing, uplifting, and thought-provoking. And believe me, I've read a few of Charmaine's personal posts. They are definitely laugh out loud. She does have a way with words. And I have said this to her just recently, I chuckle when I read them because I don't think people sometimes get her witticism. Because I see her as a writer, I often get what she's saying, but sometimes people take what she says a little too literally, and I do end up laughing out loud. So, Nationers, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy our podcast artist series, The Author, starting with the lovely and talented Charmaine Davis. Hello, Charmaine. Welcome to the Swirl World podcast.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome, dear. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Well,
how about you?
You know what? Blessed as ever and happy to be talking to, again, another Black woman artist and entrepreneur. That's one of the things that we really want to bring to our audience is the diversity and the talent and the skill, not only in the Black community, but just in the community at large, where we are and we contribute so much to making this a wonderful place. So, Charmaine, Give us a little bit of background about how you decided to become an author. And then, of course, we've already said you're an author of interracial books because you are in that type of relationship. But can you expand a little bit more on that?
Well, when I was in the third grade, I was introduced to Nancy Drew, and Nancy Drew was my in to writing, and the writer thrilled me with her stories and of adventures of Nancy Drew, and I wanted to do that too to people. I wanted to thrill people with my stories, and later on, though, I found out that Carolyn Keene, who is the writer of the Nancy Drew series, is really a syndicate of authors who contributed to those stories. But anyway, I had written stories off and on over the years, but I didn't start publication until about 2009 when my husband, he was like, I'm tired of hearing about these crazy stories about your childhood. Why don't you just write them down and let other people hear about them?
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So then I started exploring, the world of writing, and here where I live, Liberty University is basically about right across the street from me, and they were having a writers conference. And so I attended that and got some more information about writing and publication. And this was right when self-publishing was about to was really starting to explode. And then I also met a friend at a grocery store in the parking lot, and she just happened to mention that there was a local writers group in town. And then another thing that happened was that my husband bought a dad for him a playwright here in town. And so we started talking about writing. So it's like all these things just clicked into place. And then another thing that happened was that I picked up a tract at a grocery store. I didn't know it was a tract. It was shaped like money. It looked like money, like cool too, Yes. Yes. And I picked it up and said, whoa. And then right there, I had got this vision of how I could make a story out of that. And so actually my first story was a screenplay, and that was called The Track. And I've since changed it and wrote it into a book, and that was called Scent. So I had fun with that. So it was like God was giving me all these messages, like, the time is now, because I have 7 children. And so I didn't really have time to write or feel like I had the headspace to even think about writing. And so when these things just started clicking in place, I felt like my season was coming. And so then my mother-in-law was very gracious to pay for preschool for my last child, who was about 2 years old at the time, 2 or 3. Yeah. And so I was able to put her in half-day preschool about 3 days a week. And then it ended up being 5 days a week. And so she blessed me that way so I could write. And then the church, because her preschool was at a church, they had empty Sunday school classrooms. So I was able to go into a classroom, shut the door, not have Wi-Fi or any distractions, and for 3 hours I could write.
That is awesome. That's an incredible story. So what has happened is your husband, your mother-in-law, right? It was your mother-in-law that paid?
Yeah, my mother-in-law paid.
So
yes.
Your husband, your mother-in-law, a tract, all of these things were saying, just stop talking and start doing something.
That's right. That's right.
So, Charmaine, that's one of the things that we often talk about on our Facebook page and our blog, is that we have a lot of women that keep saying things like, I'm dreaming and I'm wishing and I'm hoping, but they're not doing anything. I mean, they even say, especially we have a lot of women that are spiritual women, godly women, and they're saying, I'm waiting for God to do this, I'm waiting for God to do that. And I get frustrated, not at God, so you don't misunderstand me, but I get frustrated when they say this, but you don't hear them taking subsequent action. And it sounds like the people in your life were all for you, but they were demanding that you take action, and you just said, okay, I got to take some action here. And by you doing that, look at what you've done. You have, matter of fact, let me take a few minutes. By you taking action, let me just read a few, if you don't mind. Charmaine's action has led to these books being published: Getting Riley, Falling, A Good Christmas, Breaking Wedlock, Law of the Heart, which we're going to talk about, and The Christmas Boss. She just had to meet him, Win, series, Stuck on Love, Exposed to Love, Sweetened by Love. Okay, and this is under the series that she has. Then she has Humor, The Real House, Almost a Memoir, and also she has a Fantastical Flavor and Fun, Love Fire, The Christmas Miracle Box. See what I'm talking about, nation? She is a woman that was also had a vision and dream and hoping. And she had people that loved her and said, enough of that. Go do something. And that's what we're talking about. And I'm so glad that you get that, because that did not belie or change your heart for God and what God was doing for you. As a matter of fact, what I hear from your story is everything was providential. The signs were pointing like, okay, yes, do it. But you got to do it. And that's the thing. That is so good to hear. Well, one of the things I misspoke, but I do want us to talk about it just a little bit, is one of the things that you do in your writing is get rid of this thing about Black woman as victim and white man as victimizer. And let's talk about that a little bit. And I also want to stress also, and we can talk about in your book, is not only are Black women no longer victims, the white men not only are not victimizers, they're not necessarily they're the right person for them, but they're not their savior, if that makes sense. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me how you are breaking that mold. Because a lot of IR relationships do tend to go that way. Tell us how you're breaking that mold.
Well, I'm breaking the mold by taking what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said to heart, that we're not to look at people by their skin color and judge them by their skin color, but by the content of their character. Because there have been people in my life who, although they share my same skin color and culture, they didn't treat me with love and respect.
Right.
That I thought that, the white man, I'm just saying that generically, is the way he's treated, historically that's the way white men have treated, people of color. But in my experience, I feel like I've been mistreated more by people who look like me rather than, people who are the opposite.
Right.
It's supposed to be that way.
Right.
And so, and then too, another thing was my husband and I had started listening to a guy named Ken Ham, and he does Answers in Genesis.
Right.
And he was talking about, I really love the way he talks about our identity is in Christ. We're all one blood, and how he started breaking it down that we are a family. We're not our color. We're a family, and God is so creative that He's created these different colors of people. And
absolutely.
We're family, and I just took that to heart because it's true. Because I like to look past color and see the character.
Right.
And when I'm writing a romance, I want to write about a Black woman being a partner in an equal, loving, a romantic relationship with a man. Because when I was growing up, I kind of was always attracted to white guys because, number one, that's who I went to school with.
Right. Right.
I was in the classes with them, and I could relate to them. I don't want to sound like I'm being snobbish, but they would talk about books and things and stuff that I like to talk about.
And you're not being snobbish. And you're not. A lot of people that we interview say the same thing, so you keep right on going.
Yeah, we had shared interests, and I wasn't called a nerd, and I wasn't called, you're acting white, and, that kind of thing. I was respected for my ideas and what I could bring to the table. But when I was growing up, there were no books that I knew of that featured these kind of relationships. And so when I sit down and write a romance, I just want to give the Black woman her time on the stage, to be beautiful, to be admired by someone, to be, the first lady of some man, that, respects her and sees her as a love interest and beautiful, and not according to the standards that, that's been fostered on all of us as society.
Right.
But that you can have, the kinky hair and the big lips and the big behind, or, the vivaciousness, that a lot of Black women have, and be loved for it,
Absolutely.
And I hope I'm doing my job.
I think you are. I absolutely do. That's a great way to look at it and to kind of break the mold, because, again, that's something that we try and enlighten Black women about. You're not a victim. You really are not. You get to choose. Yeah. And it's interesting. You know what, Charmaine? I went to the Creation Museum, I think a month or so ago, and if you ever get a chance, you should go. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful trip. I really enjoyed it. And what you said really hit home for me. And I also want to make it clear to the nationers, we're not decrying the beauty of our color, our ethnicity, and our cultures. God created them. What we're saying is that we have taken the focus off the beauty of them, and we have made them liabilities. so that people are able to put one another down based on something that God has created to be beautiful. One of the things that I noticed that people say, and I think you've noticed it too, and we both, I think, understand what they mean. It's like love sees no color, or no color in love, or colorblind. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm not colorblind, and so I don't want to be, because that's why God created us. That's the beauty of color. I mean, when you look at the fall foliages, if you live in a place like we do, where there are seasons, and you look at all of the beautiful colors on your tree, I see every one of them. And did you notice how beautiful they are? When all of those beautiful colors are combined together, the landscape is just awesome. And that's the way I see it. They're working together to create a beautiful picture. And so I think that you are absolutely on the right track with this. But you know what? You mentioned something earlier, and this is just girl chat. You have 7 children, and we all know that in this day and age, people say 7, and I'm going like, I think that's terrific. So tell us a little, not so much, now you'll need to tell us how you got 7 kids, because I think we can figure that out. But what is it like for you as a working author to manage doing your work as an author and manage not only your household and loving on your husband, but your 7 kids? Tell us a little bit about that, especially to a woman that's interested in going down your path and also has a long trip.
Yes. Well, I talked about seasons before. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could have done it when my kids, especially like my oldest was coming up, a teenager, and then, the toddlerhood and all that. I just did not have the brain power to think about writing a book. Even though I'd have these vivid dreams and stuff about characters and stuff, my husband's like, oh, I'm so jealous of you that you can have like these dreams with these plots and, beginning and middle and the end. I'm like, I can't believe I'm dreaming it either, but I'm loving it. And so it's like a season that happened, and my kids have now spoiled me because they really are not. I've raised them to not be needy kids. I try to raise them to be self-sufficient. And just recently I had to crack down on that again because Mama was being too nice to my children. I don't want them to be, dependent on me for everything. So right now my oldest child is married, and they're going to have a child soon next year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I found out I was going to be a grandma, so I'm happy about that. And so he's on his own. He's on his own. So the oldest in the house is now 18, and he's going to community college. And then I have another son who's going to be graduating in June. And so my youngest is 9, and she's like a little woman. I mean, because I have 4 boys first, and I have 3 girls.
Okay.
And my 9-year-old daughter, she's like a grown woman. She's very self-sufficient, can get herself done. And so I'm spoiled by my kids. And also I give them housework to do because I'm mama, but I'm not maid.
Right.
Everybody's got something to do. And so generally all of them are out of the house except for my 8, during the day. My 18-year-old, though, he has classes where he can come back home, during the day, but he doesn't bother me that much either, and he cooks his own lunch and everything. He's not looking at me like, Mama, what's for lunch? No, he goes in there and fixes his own lunch. And so I try to get finished with my writing day around 4 o'clock when my youngest comes home off the bus, because then after that we've got marching band and we got, practices and stuff like that I like to be at for my kids, to support them. So I try to get my stuff done during the day, but a lot of times I don't because I spend too much time on social media sometimes. and then too, my brain has started where I want to write like around in the afternoon now instead of in the morning. So, and my husband's like, you just need to go with, with what your brain wants to do, But anyway, like I was saying, my kids, I've trained them to be self-sufficient so I can have this time. It took a while because it used to be my middle daughter would come in as soon as she's out of school at 3:30. She'll be, Mom, guess what happened in school today? I'm like, oh, because it's going to be a long listening time. I'm going to go, okay, fine. Right. I said, you got to wait till when you see me at this computer, don't talk, sorry. I'll talk to you later. So she's learning, save her stories, because she's a storyteller too. She loves to write stories. Ooh. Yeah, and she remembers everything that happens in school, but anyway, it's just about, timing everything and teaching your kids to respect mommy time.
Well, okay, that's really good. Actually, I was chuckling while you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you said to your son, like, hey, he doesn't bother me. And I can see you sitting at your typewriter, and he's going like, and he said to me, go get that movie because she's sure ain't going to do nothing for me.
It reminds me of, if you ever saw The Shining, the movie The Shining,
yes,
and when he's in the big lobby and he's typing and his wife comes in and the evil look that he gives her. That's how I used to feel with my kids to come in, standing there in front of me and trying to type stories.
It's so funny to me. But, I like what you're saying because it's obvious you love and you're taking very good care of your kids, but you have to teach them to be independent because they are individuals and they have to grow up. And what better way to teach them independence in the loving care of loving parents, that are explaining to them, mom is working, so you need to adjust to mom's schedule. And then when, you're done, I will give you all of the attention. And of course, Nationers, we're not saying that she abandoned her kids. It's one of those things where obviously if there's an emergency or something happens, all of that goes to the wayside. But she's trying to teach them independence because that's what we should be teaching all, of our kids. Yes. And I think that's a great education for those that are interested. Well, before we wrap up, Charmaine, I want you to, maybe if you have one or two or even three things that you could tell an aspiring author that they can do or that would help them succeed in becoming successful in their endeavor, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
The number one thing I would say is a support system. Like my husband is my greatest encourager and supporter. I mean, I just don't know what I would do without him with the way he encourages me, because sometimes writing can get tough and I quit almost every day. Sometimes I'm not going to write anymore. That's too tough. But he's always there, to remind me why I'm writing and all this stuff. And also to also say that, nobody's like making you do this. If it's not done for you anymore, don't do it. You're not wedded to it. So number one is the support. And then number two, I would say you need to read a lot. Get the language of words into your brain. Don't bypass that. And then also learn about the craft of writing, but you also need to learn about yourself, what you like. So then I would recommend journaling on a regular basis, because you hear a lot about the author's voice. You got to find your author's voice. But the best way to find the author's voice is to discover your own voice through writing on paper. You're journaling your day, things that happen during the day, that kind of thing. That will absolutely start letting you know what kind of voice that you have, and you'll become more natural when it comes down to writing the actual words. And then the third thing is keep your butt in the seat. Have a writing goal and keep your butt in the seat till it's done. So that way you get your work done. So the support system, reading other works, that writing that you admire, that you like, that speaks to you, journaling, and keep your butt in the seat.
Now, for the big, tell us about the new book, Law of the Heart. What's the good? What we got? Give us the good stuff. What you got?
Okay, Law of the Heart. I wrote this story because I really wanted to write a love story about an abused woman who finds the love she deserves, a love that she thinks she doesn't deserve, because she's in an abused relationship with her husband, who, ironically, this man is a social justice activist. So it's a kind of irony in that her husband is supposed to be her protector, and in fact, he's not her protector. He's her victimizer. He abuses her, but he overlooks that fact in helping other people, strangers, for them to get justice, but he doesn't give justice to his wife. And so also in this book, I wanted to address the prejudice that often occurs in the Black community directed against, our own.
Right.
And I wanted to bring out that hypocrisy. So I thought, okay, this would make a good story about an abused Black wife who falls in love with the white cop who kills her Black activist husband.
Oh.
And I thought that would be really juicy to start talking about all those issues, those hot-button issues.
You are so right. The juice all over the place on that one. You're so right. Oh, this sounds like a page turner. I'm sorry. Keep going. You got my interest. Keep going.
Well, Well, it's also a story about love, what real love looks like. You know, we have, our ideas of love, but this is like love covers a multitude of sin. You know, the real kind of love. That real love is ultimate. That real love is also the ultimate camouflage.
The Swirl World once again would like to thank Charmaine T. Davis for appearing with us on our Artist Series featuring the authors. And if you have not done so, please download us from iTunes or listen to us on Stitcher, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. Clamor, SoundCloud, Player FM, and Podbay FM also carries the Swirl World podcast. Don't forget to check us out on our Facebook pages, The Swirl World and Military Swirl Hero Love. And be sure to become a part of our membership community at 50 Days of Dating with Rachel Robinson, Date with Purpose. Don't forget our blog space, theswirlworld.com. And remember, know your purpose, be intentional, know your worth, and most of all, keep swirling.
The Swirl World.
Interracial.
Diverse.
Beautiful.